This video is going to show you how to get set up with trigger.dev, how to create your first job, and how to actually run it and test it. So let's get started. So we've created a project, and so we're in the dashboard, and there's a command we need to run here. This one. This will get our project set up with trigger.dev, and it automatically puts your API key and the parameters in that you need. So we're going to run that. Okay, so we are going to go with the default here, which is GitHub issues. So we can see here there's a file called trigger. So this sets up our trigger client. So this is the thing that's used to communicate, but from your server to us. And then in the app API folder, you can see there's a root here. And this is exposing an API endpoint so that trigger.dev can communicate with your server. And the final piece of the puzzle is there's a jobs folder, and in there we have an example job. Which you can see there. If we just go back to the root a sec, you can see that we are importing that job. So we're actually, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to rename this to GitHub issue. And that's going to not be very happy about that temporarily. We'll do that. So we're going to call this new GitHub issue reminder. And 0.01 is fine. So what we need to do is we need to get a GitHub integration set up. So the way we do that, I'll just clear this away, is we install the GitHub package. Okay, and then we should be able to import that. So we do const GitHub equals new GitHub, and that's going to import. And we're going to go with that. We need to give it an ID. So this is how trigger.dev can find it. So we'll just call it GitHub, and we're going to use a token, and we're going to do that. So we need to actually fill in that environment variable. We'll do that in a second. Okay, so I added my GitHub token into the env local file, which means that this should now be able to connect to GitHub. What we're going to do is we're going to use a GitHub trigger here. Change this trigger from event trigger to GitHub triggers. And we want a repo trigger. Okay, so what should happen is when this when someone creates a new issue in this repo, it should run this code. And so before we do anything fancier, let's just actually give this a go. We need to run the project. So we'll do npm run dev. If we go over to our browser in a second, open a new window localhost, we'll see we have an Next.js site running. That's great. And then the other thing we need to do is we need to run the other CLI command. So if we go back to the web page here, you see it says step 1 is to run this, which we ran, run your next app, which we're doing, and then run this CLI dev command. So let's do that. So what this command does is it creates a tunnel so that your machine can be reached from trigger.dev, and it refreshes the jobs. So if we go back now and refresh this page, we'll see that we have our first job that's been registered. So new GitHub issue reminder on issue opened, like all the things we contained, but obviously we can see it hasn't run yet. So we'll click into it. And there are a couple of things we could do here. We could do a test. So if you click through to test, you can run a test, and this basically sends data to your run directly without having to actually perform the action. And we have examples, so you can click here and do issue opened. So maybe let's actually do that. So this example payload is when an issue is opened. We'll hit run test. And you can see that we had our first run. So we automatically pull information from the data for you. So you can see this is trigger.dev empty sample issue, and that log from the code, which is this, hello world, with the payload appears. So you can see hello world here, and the payload is this input, and it completed. But really we want to do a real GitHub webhook. So let's also do that. So if we go here, this is the repo that we defined, and we'll do this is a first test. Submit. Oops. And then if we go back to this page and refresh, we can see we now have a real run. So this first one was a test. You can see the test tick box. And the second one was a real run. So in this case, we should be able to see somewhere in here. This is a first test. So there you go. You can see. But this isn't a very interesting job at the moment. So let's actually do something useful in here. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to make an issue reminder. So what we want to do is we want to wait. To do that, you do IO, which has the useful functions you can perform, and we'll do wait. And then we need to give it a name, this wait. So we'll do wait 24 hours. And then this is the number of seconds, not milliseconds. So we can take that 1,000 off. So that will wait 24 hours. But that doesn't work great in dev because you don't really want to be waiting 24 hours in dev. So what we're going to do actually is we're going to declare a variable up here, which is called delay duration. and we're going to do that delay based on the amount of time. So we can look at the environment type, and if it's development, we're going to do just 10 seconds. Otherwise, we're going to do 24 hours exactly. So let's put that variable in there. And then what we want to do is we want to get the issue to see if it's changed state. So to do that, we do issue equals await IO, which is where integrations live inside the back. Here you go. So GitHub isn't here, and that's because we haven't added any integrations to this particular job. So the trigger uses an integration, but we haven't actually passed them into the job itself. So the way we do that is we go integrations, and we pass an object in with the integrations. And for now, it's GitHub. Now this syntax is the same as doing this. So we basically, it's called GitHub, and we may as well call it GitHub inside the thing. You could do something different here. You could call it like GH, in which case inside here it would be GH, but I think we'll go with just GitHub. And what we want to do is we want to get the issue. So we're going to do that. We need to give this a name. And you can see that this payload object, it has all the full types. So you can, for example, you can do this and you can see everything that's there. And why don't we actually run that? So we're going to save, and we don't really want to have to go back and create a new issue to do this. But what we can do is we can just rerun. So from our previous run, which was a real one, we're going to hit rerun. We're going to do run again. And so you can see it's waiting 10 seconds, which is great. I might actually make that shorter for the next run through. It moves on to the next step and it gets issue. And we can see again, we pull out information here. We can click in and we can see the input was this and the output was at issue. So let's go back to our code. And what we want to do is we want to look at whether the issue has changed. Let's get rid of this return at the bottom. We don't need that. And what we want to do is we want to actually assign the issue to someone. Oops, GitHub.add issue assignees. And we will assign it to me. My GitHub username is Aiken. Right, let's save this and let's run again. And if we run again, actually, do you know what? I'm going to make that delay a bit shorter. I'm just going to make that like 3 seconds. And then we'll rerun. Okay, so very short delay now in dev. Get issue, add issue assignees. So we can see we did that. And if we go to GitHub, we can see now I'm assigned to the issue, which is great. So this is good, but really what I'd like to do is I would like to send a Slack message when this happens, basically really drawing someone's attention to the fact that it hasn't been, no one's done anything on this issue. So to do that, we need to use the Slack integration. So we'll go ahead and install that. And then we're going to rerun the dev command. So we'll create the tunnel again and we'll connect it. Like before, we need to create a client. So we'll do that by Slack equals new Slack, and we'll import that. And this time, it doesn't accept a token because Slack uses OAuth. And so we're going to need to set OAuth up. But first of all, we need to pass that integration into here because we want to use it. The other thing we're going to want to do is actually just write the code. So let's do that first. So we want to do await io.slack.post message. Create a Slack channel. And we just need to get the details from that. So we see down here we have a channel ID, we're going to copy that. And we'll paste that in here. And the message, which I think is text, yeah. We're going to do the issue. Okay, that's pretty good. But maybe we will actually do this using the result on line 41. Okay, so this should send a Slack message. Of course, we haven't hooked up the Slack integration yet, but let's see what happens. The Slack is going to fail. Yeah, okay. So we can see here we're waiting on connections, and we now have a red marker and the integrations on the left-hand side. So we need to go to that. And we can see here we have a GitHub integration, which we set up before, which is local only. So we'll click Slack. And in this case, we want to authenticate as a bot. So Slack has a couple of different options. And we're doing this as the developer team. So we'll just call it Slack, we'll do all this. So we want to actually post a message. Okay, so the defaults and the scopes already have chat right, which is what we need. So we're just going to hit connect to Slack. So this is the trigger.dev app posting to the trigger.dev. So now we don't have any red errors. So it looks like we've set it up correctly. And what we'll do is we'll go back to GitHub We'll create a new issue. Hit submit. And we can see that it got assigned there. It took a few seconds because of the delay. And if we go to Slack, we can see here, issue, will this remind us, is still open. I've assigned it to Matic. You can see there's a new run here. This time it took 8 seconds. And so as a reminder, we waited, we got the issue. We then in the code compared to see whether it had changed or not. We added the assignee of me, and then we posted the message, and you can see the message has been pulled out here. And the whole thing completed, and it took 8.1 seconds. So that is an overview of how you can create a job using Trigger.dev.